Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. Curry, one-on-one. Irving puts it up. It's good. Kyrie Irving from downtown. The three, steps back, crossover, puts up a three. Rebound James. Second. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
Cleveland! This is for you!
Good day and welcome, Cavs fans, to another edition of the Block the Shot to Stop podcast. That is Tim Daniel. I am Kevin Lynch. We are here, and you're probably wondering why we're here. The Cavs did not just play a game. You're used to us coming to you right after a game on YouTube, and then right afterward on audio. It's because we're going to try something additional to our Cavs coverage this week, and that's to do NBA weekly segments where we look around the league through the Cavs lenses. We're always focused on the Cavs, but we want to check out some of the other teams, some of the other storylines, how it may relate to the Cavs now, later in the season, the playoffs, all those things. So to do that, I brought in my buddy Tim here. We're gonna go through. We got a few things we definitely want to touch on, and then we'll kind of see where the conversation goes from there. So Tim, you ready to talk some NBA even outside of the Cavs?
Always. I didn't know we could still do such a thing anymore.
I know, right? Taking us back, right? All right, man. Well, I think the most obvious place to start, if we're doing an NBA weekly from a Cavs fan perspective, is we should start with the Boston Celtics.
Yeah.
Because that is the Cavs measuring stick. It's going to be their biggest or most likely opponent this year. They're, standing in the way of getting a number one seed, quite possibly a playoff matchup. So let's talk a little Celtics, Tim. So from what you've seen of them this year, what are your thoughts?
My first thought is I think Jason Tatum's the MVP right now.
Yeah.
If we had to do a very short season MVP, I think that he probably is the guy. And I think right now Basketball Reference has it as Shea.
Yeah.
Which I understand. The Thunder are 7-0, like the Cavs. I mean, Cavs are actually 8-0. Jared Allen, funny enough, is 4 on the MVP tracker.
Oh, good. Oh, nice.
But he's been awesome, man. I think that realistically, look, we all know how painful it is for me to give credit to the Boston Celtics. So, but it's just hard to not like Jason Tatum, right? He's so good. And what he went through this summer with not playing on the Olympic team and all the controversy there, certainly seems like he used that as motivation. And that's what the greats do, right? They see where they felt like they were disrespected and they make something happen. And I mean, that first night against the Knicks, they were unbelievable. Yeah. And I know they have the loss to the Pacers. It's the NBA. You're going to lose games, right? But to be 7-1 right now, and Tatum is really just been lights out. 48% from the floor, 36% from three, 78% from the line, which I think is definitely going to get better. He's rebounding really well. He's passing the ball really well. He's not turning it over, and he's putting up 30 a game. I think the Boston Celtics story obviously starts with him, and I think that right now he has been the top guy in the league as far as putting the team on his back, and probably the best American player right now for sure.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. And Tatum has been awesome. You're right. He almost seemed like he was, whether it was mad or embarrassed or had some kind of negative feelings come out of the Olympics, where it's usually the opposite. Guys are like on a high and it's a confidence builder. Tatum's playing mad this season. Like you can tell, like he seems more demonstrative, like less, he's usually kind of one of the more social stars in the NBA, like talking and joking around. When I've seen them, I haven't really seen him do that. He seems super focused, super kind of almost, like I said, upset going into a game. Just like feels like he really has something to prove, which is crazy coming off of winning the championship, being the Finals MVP. But yeah, he's awesome. And as far as the best American player goes, I have to agree with you there. And kind of expanding from Tatum, like the Celtics, there's no such thing as a perfect team, right? But they did as close to a perfect job assembling a modern day NBA team as you can. And honestly, for as much credit as we give Kobe Altman and Kenny Atkinson, Boston's kind of their blueprint that the Cavs used to build this team. The personnel is obviously a little bit different, but to just have kind of the interchangeable pieces where like Holiday and Brown for the Celtics are extremely interchangeable. Same thing with Garland and Mitchell on the Celtics. On the Cavs. One thing the Celtics have that the Cavs are still trying to develop is that big wing talent, like a Tatum, like a Brown. Jaylen Brown's also he hasn't shot the ball particularly well, but he's been very good in everything else so far this year. Also, kind of playing a little mad and everything. And they're doing this without Kristaps Porzingis yet, who at times was probably their second, if not third best player last year.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any reason to think they're not going to be right in the thick of the championship hunt again.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, you've heard the national pundits say that they could see the Celtics winning 70 games, and that's certainly possible. I mean, with how good they are, how well they're coached. We all laugh at Joe Mazzulla for being kind of goofy and kind of a crazy man, but he just showing he knows what to do and how to motivate his team and get the best out of them. So it's a team that kind of like the Cavs didn't make any moves and are improving. And that's what's really fascinating about these two teams particularly and what they've been able to do to kind of establish themselves. I mean, I said, we started the show at the beginning of the season, I thought this would be the Eastern Conference Finals. And I have no reason this far into the season, 8 games for both teams, to think otherwise.
Couldn't agree more. And we can certainly touch back on the Celtics, but you led right into what I wanted our second topic to be, is kind of the imbalance between the East and the West. Right now, after most teams have played 7-8 games, the East only has 2 teams above 500, and that's the Celtics and our Cavs. Flipping over to the West, there are 9 teams above 500, and so it was honestly supposed to be the East that was more top heavy this year, that had at least 5 or 6 teams that really separated themselves from the pack, but it's kind of been the opposite. Like, what do you think are some of the reasons for that? We'll start with the East. Like, why there is kind of such the imbalance with so many teams around or under 500?
First thing is probably injuries, right? You look at Milwaukee has played a game now without Giannis or without Middleton. Philadelphia is yet to get Joel Embiid. Paul George just played his first game. That plays into it a lot. I think the East also had far more teams who are in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes, and that certainly helps as well. I mean, the Bulls cannot figure out how to get into the Cooper Flag sweepstakes, which is embarrassing. Brooklyn's played above their heads, but we know what they're going to end up being. Though I do think they're a pretty likable team. But also I just feel like with the East compared to the West, you're looking at just a lot of teams who are just right on that like middle line. They don't know who they are. Are we good? Are we bad? And they can't seem to figure it out. So, Orlando, obviously now they're without Banchero. I don't know how they can improve with that. Indiana, Tyus Halliburton's been off to a really slow start, and they need him to get going. Atlanta, I'm not an Atlanta guy. We've talked about that quite a bit.
Trae Young's playing really well this year.
He is playing really well.
He's maybe as well as he ever has.
Then Washington, Charlotte, Toronto. We know what those teams are. So it's just a lot of that situation.
No, for sure. Like, looking at the standings, I mean, I am very surprised that there's only 2 teams above 500. But like, the things that jump out to me, like 2 that you mentioned, the Nets and the Bulls being in 5th and 6th right now. Again, extremely early. You have to think neither of those are gonna hold up. And you're right, there is kind of a clump of teams that are all kind of like, do we want to go for a play-in, maybe a 6 seed, or like you said, get in the sweepstakes for the lottery and everything. The 2 that like just jump out at you are the last 2, the 14th and 15th seed. The last 2 seeds are the Sixers and the Bucks. And I know the Bucks just played a game without Giannis. Sixers haven't had Embiid and just got PG back, as you said. But even despite all that, they have enough talent. They should not be the last 2 teams in the East and have 2 wins between them. Just, I don't know. And you have to think that's not going to sustain. But how long does it go on before you think maybe this will stay like this?
I mean, December is normally when you kind of figure out who a team is for the year. And the trajectory for Milwaukee, like Philadelphia, realistically, I think has every chance to be okay. The Embiid drama, obviously, we'll see how that shakes out. It's very likely he's going to get suspended for this last altercation with the reporter, though I don't blame him for being angry. So I think Philadelphia still has a chance to be fine. I really don't believe Milwaukee. I just really feel like I felt this way throughout before the season started. I didn't think they'd be 1-7 by any means, but I just kind of really thought they'd be the team on the outside looking in. And it's nothing against Lillard. I think Lillard's been really good this year, but and obviously Giannis, when he has played, has been an MVP caliber player just on a bad team. but something just doesn't seem right. Their coaching staff obviously seems to be kind of in shambles. They can't seem to figure out what they want to be. The Taurean Prince, Gary Trent Jr. signings have not looked great so far.
Yeah.
Brooke Lopez looks like he's aging quickly.
Yeah.
And I think that these things are just kind of catching up. So these old teams, man, like if you look at, the Lakers playing the Pistons last night. Yeah, on paper, the Lakers are probably much better than the Pistons, but they're older, and the Pistons are much younger and more athletic and quicker. And transition is where they beat the Lakers really bad last night. And you're starting to see a lot more of that. And I think the Bucks are kind of in a similar situation to the Lakers.
Yeah, I agree. If you would have told me Giannis and Dame would have only missed one game between them and they'd have played as well as they did, I would not have thought they were 1-6
right
that way. And I honestly, for the position they were in with the salary cap, I liked what they did in the offseason. I like as just role players, Taurean Prince, Gary Trent Jr., DeLon Wright. I thought the price was right on all those guys, that they did as well as they could have. But you're right. It has been a real struggle for the Bucks. You never know. Again, I have made a habit of not counting out teams that have one of the best players in the world on them.
Sure.
As Cleveland fans, we should all know that very well from everybody who ever doubted LBJ when he was here.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I don't feel very optimistic about the Bucks. Maybe slightly more optimistic about the Sixers. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes. And the only other team you briefly touched on them in the East, and then we'll move over to the West, is the Pistons. Like you and I did the post-game pod when the Cavs played the Pistons, and we were both kind of taken aback by how good they looked opposed to last year, and thought, man, this could be like kind of a fun team. Like with as good as Cunningham looked, as good as Jaden Ivey looked, Duran didn't have the best game, but he's that night, but he's a very solid player. Brought in some veteran grown-ups in the room in Tim Hardaway Jr., Tobias Harris. And sure enough, they won their last two games. They started looking pretty good. Like this team could be a play-in team with eyes of getting up to that 6th seed.
Yeah. And I think, Cade has been really, really good, man.
Awesome.
Really good. Averaging his career high in points, rebounds, and assists. He's, he is turning the ball over a lot, but I still think that's a lot of just being a young team, learning how to play together in a new regime. But he's been so fun. And I think he's certainly in the conversation for the All-Star game. I think he's certainly in the conversation to be up with Garland as far as who have been amongst the top point guards in the East so far. And seeing Cade's jump, we talked about Mobley's, and I still think Mobley's definitely been the guy who's made the biggest jump so far this season. But I don't think Cade's too far behind him. And I'm not just saying the irony of the fact they're in the same draft class.
Yeah.
But what Cade Cunningham's been able to do, and a lot of that is obviously just getting better players around him, has really been so awesome to see for this Pistons team. I love Jalen Duren. I've always been a big fan of Jalen Duren. When he was at Memphis, I got to cover a game when they played at Cincinnati, and he dunked on the opening play of the game. And I was like, oh, this guy is the truth. And you've just seen his talent level. He's it's like a young Andre Drummond almost, which is that ability to just crash the glass.
Yeah.
Has some work to do to get to that level.
That's a good comparison. I like that comparison a lot.
But yeah, and then Jaden Ivey has taken such a good leap, and I think JB's done such an awesome job with all those young kids. And Tim Hardaway Jr. has been really good for them, really fitting the roles they asked him to fit. For Quentin Grimes, that was the trade. I like Quentin Grimes, but man.
Yeah, and if we're talking most fun teams to watch on League Pass in the East, they might be a top 4 right now.
Yeah, I think they are.
With all, like you said, the injuries and the dysfunction on other teams and not playing that well. Once you get past the Cavs and the Celtics, it's kind of up in the air who's the most enjoyable teams to watch. And from what I've seen, I've enjoyed watching the Pistons as much as just about anybody else.
I have too. I just really have had a blast watching them. Obviously, we all know I watched the Lakers probably just as much as the Cavs, maybe just a little less. So I wasn't very pleased with how they played last night, but I was very, very impressed with the Pistons.
Yeah, no, for sure. And since you brought up the Lakers, let's go over to the Western Conference, take a look around. And as I alluded to, 9 teams above 500 in the West compared to 2 in the East. There is only 1 team that is more than 2 games below 500 out of the 15. The parity is wild. And we knew the West was going to be incredibly like challenging and exciting for the whole regular season. But this maybe even took that to another level. So just open floor. Who do you want to start with in the West as a team that, you know, you have some thoughts on, you've enjoyed watching? Who do you want to start with?
Golden State. I mean,
Okay.
look, they haven't had Steph Curry for all 7 games, and they're 6-1 and on a 4-game win streak. And I understand the schedule probably hasn't been the toughest so far. But man, for a team that everyone was kind of like, you know, I still stand by. I think that if they have to miss Curry for an extended period of time, they're going to be in trouble. But they have been really impressive so far. The Clippers, not, you know, opening win by 1. I know it's kind of a tough one. The way that they, I'm sorry, I'm looking at a different schedule. My apologies. They lost to the Clippers. That's their one loss. But the Pelicans games back to back when they just handled them, being in that tough fight with the Rockets and they pulled off by 6. And then last night, Steph being back and kind of just like leading the way and what they were able to do. It's a team that kind of made a lot of very similar moves to the Bucks did, right? And the kind of the sense of what the guys they picked up, but those guys have meshed really well together. People are a lot higher on Podziemski than I am. I think he's a good player. Do I think he's the next star of the Golden State Warriors? No, but he certainly is fitting the role that they need him to play right now. Yeah. The Buddy Hield pickup has been really nice off the bench for them. Yeah, I really like them getting Kyle Anderson. I think that he's a super underrated player. And for them, man, I just feel like things are clicking. Now, I don't know if this is going to last because Curry has a bad game on the floor. How do they win? But so far, it's been pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's a great call of who to start with. They're, you know, for years now, the whole thing with the Warriors has been, can they mesh the youth movements with the established guys? And obviously Clay's not there anymore, but you know, they now have like Wiggins and a couple other established guys that they're bringing along. These guys who are still young, but not quite as young, you know, Jonathan Kuminga and Moody and Pods, as you said. And it seems like it's working as well as it ever has. Like they're actually getting good performances out of both the young and more veteran guys. They're spreading around minutes. They're kind of like the Cavs, where I think they have 10 guys averaging double-digit minutes at least. So they're really fun to watch. And even now at 35, 36 years old, whatever he is, Curry might be the most fun guy in the league to watch. At least when he gets hot, it's the most fun 2 or 3 minutes of basketball you can watch.
It is, man, and like underrated so far is Trey Jackson Davis. I mean, he's been their center, really, and he's not much bigger than Draymond, and has kind of really elevated that role. I mean, he's 6'9", 245, where Draymond's like 6'6", 260, and he's playing center in the NBA. 6'6", 230. Sorry, Draymond, I did not mean to put extra weight on you, but what they are getting from him as far as being a 2nd-round pick, I really liked him a lot in Indiana. I feel like he just played on a lot of bad teams. And so I'm happy to see that he's kind of stepping into that role and playing really well for this team.
Yeah, I completely agree. You know, kind of going away from the Warriors, and I think we have to talk about the Thunder for a couple minutes. They're the only other undefeated team in the league besides our Cavs. And they've looked really good doing it.
Yeah.
Like it's all coming together. They don't even one of their 2 big offseason moves, Isaiah Hartenstein, he hasn't played yet. And he was supposed to add a whole nother dimension to that team that they haven't gotten to play around with yet. And, you know, kind of like some similarities to the Cavs in like their guys. It seems like every one of their guys has like at least improved a little bit since last year. And then they like the Cavs and like the Celtics, also betting on continuity, bringing in a couple guys around the edges of an established team. And I think they're, you know, I actually made a bet before the season that they would have the best record in the NBA. I'm feeling pretty good about that. And yeah, they're just, I fully expect them to end up being a top 2 or 3 seed, if not the number 1 seed. And for them, it's going to be all about getting ready for the playoffs, and can their play kind of translate to the playoffs? Because last year they're the best team in the regular season in the West and maybe struggled a little bit.
So it's funny because they are dominant and they are impressive, but I don't have a blast watching them. I think it's because I know how good they are.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that I hate them. It's not that I don't want them to do well. It's not like, but like, I don't like watching them like, oh man, I can't wait to watch the Thunder tonight, just because I expect them to just go out there and just kick ass, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was the first one. It finally happened. But I mean, dude, you talk about their defense. 3 of the last 4 games, they've held teams under 100 points. So far, they have held. Let's see. I mean, actually, I pulled the schedule right here. In the regular season, I think they've allowed 2 teams to score 100 points on them in the NBA.
Yeah.
I mean, that's nuts. But guys like Caruso. So I mentioned the MVP tracker from Basketball Reference earlier. Shea right now being number 1 on that, and absolutely should be with how tremendous he's been this year. But they're awesome, and they also do a really good job of balancing their minutes, and they don't put a lot of stress on their players' bodies. When they do get Hartenstein back, God only knows what that does for them to take that next step as far as having that guy that can give Chet a few extra minutes to kind of relax. But I think Jalen Williams has kind of become my favorite player on this team. He's super fun to watch, and he's so talented, and his two-way skills, he's getting so much better offensively. He guards the best player every night. He's awesome, man.
Yeah, no, he is. And he was one of those guys we talked about, like Mobley being like most improved or something. Like he would have been in the top 5 of my guesses coming into the season.
Me too.
Because the most improved usually goes to somebody who's already really good, goes from really good to star, right?
Yeah.
And I think both of those guys were really good candidates to do that this year. The other team I kind of wanted to talk about, not so much as I'm watching right now, but a team I'm going to kind of keep a side eye on for the whole season is the Houston Rockets. And it's because they have the whole, do they have too many guys theory? They have the perfect setup if they wanted to trade 3 young talented guys to get a star on that team. And I think they're a team that could dictate how the standings shake out, whether they go for it, make a go for it move like that and end up getting a top 4 seed or so, or if they focus more on developments, are willing to take a play-in seed and let some of the more established teams kind of move their way up the standings.
It's interesting, right? You look at them and you look at their spacing particularly, and you go, why isn't Reed Shepherd playing more? And then you're also like, man, what if they could get Jalen Green to just be a little more consistent? Because he had games last week. He had 36 and 23. And then he dropped 7 against the Warriors and 15 against the Knicks in 32 minutes. And you're like, man, Jalen Green's like I know he's really fun to watch play a guy, but I know he's never going to be win a championship because of how he plays. He's just going to be kind of like your stats guy. And because he's unbelievably talented, but he just does a lot of goofy things that you're like, okay. But yeah, I think that's a team that could really go either way. Like you said, they are super young, super talented, and they're a lot of fun to watch. I took their over this year just because I liked the roster, and I like Ime a lot as a coach. This person's another story from the stories that came out a couple of last year, but they are certainly one of the more interesting teams to watch because it really can go any way. And obviously, I know your Cincinnati Bearcat ties, Tari Eason, a kid I covered in college. So always want to see him do well.
Yeah, no, they're a lot of fun, and it's always one of the most fun things to watch in the NBA is the young team coming up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we like from the core of when we really became basketball fans, we could probably rattle off the handful of teams that we saw kind of go from like young and promising to good to great, right? I'm thinking like the Thunder and some Spurs teams.
The mid-90s Orlando Magic.
That's a great one. I was going to say the Warriors in the mid-2000s to watch the Splash Brothers kind of come up. Were great, but yeah, no, I just think they're a really interesting team, and I'm not like as interested in them today as I will be, say, a month or 2 from now to see how they're playing and what they might do to kind of dictate the course of their season and frankly the Western Conference standings. All right, I got a couple things I want to touch on, and we're going to do this maybe every one of these podcasts, barring injury or anything. We're going to do a 2-minute LeBron appreciation moment, at least when you and I are on together, right? So LeBron right now, like 22 points, 7.5 assists, 7 rebounds in year 22. So I looked up the stat. only one guy has played 22 seasons in the NBA. Do you know who that is?
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Vince Carter.
Oh,
Kareem played 21.
I was close.
There's a bunch of guys that played 21. Robert Parrish, Kevin Garnett, Dirk.
Robert Parrish barely played. We can
Right,
probably take 2 or 3 years off that.
But LeBron is in year 22. Only one of the guys ever played 22 seasons, and it was Vince Carter. And I love Vince. Vince was a shell of himself at that point, averaging 5 points a game, kind of more a victory cigar type player more than anything else. And LeBron is averaging, he's still a top 15-ish player in the league right now with what he's doing.
An All-NBA candidate, yeah.
Yeah, and what's going on here, Tim? We watched LeBron James lead Team USA to the gold, along with Steph Curry this summer, and have an All-NBA season last year, and then he's coming back having a similar performance. How is this happening?
And this is not even taking into account that his teammate is also making a case for potentially being an MVP candidate this year.
Very true.
So that's also what's fascinating about what he's doing, kind of becoming the second option that he's probably wanted to be for a little while now. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And it's a team that's very up and down. Obviously, we've seen that so far this year. The Minnesota win was awesome, and then last night was terrible, like we already referenced. But for him, the consistency is just something where, I always make rules in NBA podcasts. I'm never going to do the GOAT debate. I think it's silly. It's a waste of time. No one cares. Yeah. No one's going to change their opinion.
Correct.
But at this point, if you can't appreciate the longevity, if you're finding ways to negate what he's done by throwing out fake steroid accusations, which no way, shape, or form makes sense for the sake of how fast he is still. Yeah. Or you're bringing up that, he's just the money he's putting into his body. It's like, okay, you're just wasting your breath. Like at some point you have to sit down and be like, this is impressive and this is awesome. Like the guy or not. What he's doing is unbelievable. And the fact that we're talking about a guy who is probably going to be second or third team NBA, who's probably going to find a way to get this Lakers team to the playoff because they are going to make a move that they can make. I don't know what it is, but there's no way they're looking at this current roster and they're going to stand pat come at least February. And they're going to try to get some guys around this too to kind of make this happen. This is unbelievable, man. This is something where we've never seen anything like it. Even Tom Brady. I know Tom Brady won a Super Bowl in his later years, but he wasn't, TB12. Like he was just kind of had really good players and was just get the ball to them in the open field and make things happen.
Yeah, particularly, I think Brady's last year kind of almost leaves a bad taste in your mouth because the year before he was really good and won a Super Bowl. But so that's what I said. Agree. GOAT debates are silly and pointless. I do think the closest I'll get to it is saying Tom Brady and LeBron James have had the best 2 careers of anyone in the 4 major sports in the U.S. And I don't think that's debatable at this point. It's just, there's not any more adjectives you can use. You just kind of sit back, enjoy it because you think at some point it will end. It doesn't seem like it, but some point it will. And yeah, I'm just gonna enjoy it. Hope I can get to a Lakers game like you did this year and see him live and hope that the Lakers, stay relevant enough that he kind of, continues to be in the forefront of the NBA because he should be for how he's playing.
Yeah, not to take over your show, but 7 games in. What are your JJ impressions?
I like him. I think there's no there's no doubt the guy is, incredibly mindful of basketball. I think he had the brains to coach.
Me too.
And everything. For me, it was throwing him in that situation, like the premier team in the NBA as far as attention goes. That's going to have even more attention because there's LeBron, and now they have LeBron's son on the team. And it was more the limelight that you've actually seen JJ as a player and even as a podcast can be a little bit short-tempered. I was a little bit worried about that, just kind of more than his ability to coach and knowing everything. But I've been very impressed with him and says a lot that they are another team that brought back pretty much the same roster, but have looked significantly better than they did for most of last season already.
Yeah, what shocks me about them, and I think this is going to come in improvement as the system is figured out. Defense is always going to be the hardest thing to figure out as far as like a team defense. They're 27th overall in defensive efficiency, but they're 11th in half court defense.
Yeah.
So that tells you that transition defense is awful, and that's going to come with time. I think,
and it's going to come with AD and LeBron on your roster. Like, let's be honest,
exactly.
For everything you ask of them, they're not going to get back on defense every single time.
Exactly.
So no, I completely agree there. All right, well, one more topic to record about, and we'll kind of wrap up. I kind of left this up to you. One player or one anything that you want to talk about, bring up to something that you've noticed in these first couple weeks of the season.
This is gonna sound funny,
okay,
but Ben Simmons being fun to watch play basketball again.
yeah, he's actually involved in mine, but please, you go first.
So I know there's a lot of conversation and chatter going around that he could be a trade candidate, and I get it, but his contract still is pretty brutal for a guy you don't know what you're going to get from on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
But it's still kind of the same player. He's not going out there and scoring huge games, but his passing ability is still there. The fact that you can switch him between 1 and 4 on defense is really nice. Still really, he's a good rebounder. Obviously, he's already battling some back issues, which is just typical par for the course. I don't even believe he's injured anymore. I think he's just kind of mentally fragile, unfortunately. I hope the best for him on that. But he's been really fun when he's on the floor, and I'm happy to see it. I hope the best for him. Probably the weirdest, strangest NBA career of all time. So hopefully he gets back on track to just being serviceable and being a good role player.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you kind of stepped right into mine was like, I've called this, I called this first 2 weeks kind of the 2 weeks of I'm calling it the backup point guard, or more guys like that either weren't starters or that were starters but not stars. Like, you see a lot of like increased level of performance from guys that are point guards. Like a prime example is like Scottie Pippen Jr. was like bare fringe NBA player these last couple of years since he was at Vanderbilt. I saw him at Vanderbilt a couple times. Now he's like a really important piece of the Grizzlies. And another one you could kind of predict before the season, but like Tyus Jones, like how much better does Phoenix look with him, like an adult point guard in the room, kind of setting up all those scores, and Ben Simmons is a part of that. And I call it the backup point guard. I've actually really liked Jamal Sheds as a rookie. I loved him in college and thought he was good. Or guys reemerging, like bigger name guys like LaMelo's played really well to start the year. Having John Morant back is just so amazing.
Wonderful. Like, so wonderful.
He's now doing 360 labs where he was going to dunk and then decided not to, and then like ends up on the other side of the basket laying it in. Guy is ridiculous. But yeah, I think I've just noticed appreciating the contribution of point guards across the league more than I have in recent memory. It's been all about the wings the last, decade or so. And I feel like there's been a lot of like really high level point guard contributions. Even Jordan Poole's playing kind of well to start the year. So I mean, anybody kind of in that realm stick out to you besides Ben Simmons?
Kind of in the same element, just different circumstances, and I know he's out right now, but seeing Lonzo again and seeing Lonzo play well, has been awesome and so great, because I was such a fan. I don't know how you felt about him as a player, but I was a huge fan at UCLA. I thought he would be the Lakers point guard of the future. Don't blame them one bit for making the trade they did. The way he improved in New Orleans, where he had that really bad shooting year that first year, and then the second year gets himself a max contract with the Bulls from the year he had. Comes to the Bulls, and they're a completely different team. They look great with him on the floor. And now to see him being a part of the team and being good, still the same defender, shockingly, with the knee problems he's had. That's what's really surprising. Still a good shooter, still a good passer. Hope to God the Bulls find a way to move him, because he does not need to play for that team. But I've been so happy to see him playing basketball again.
Yeah. No, for sure. I'm rooting for him as well. Another guy I've always had a soft spot for and really came into everyone's kind of living rooms this summer is Dennis Schroeder. I've always loved Schroeder.
Me too.
The Olympic Iverson, is that what we were calling him? It was something like that this summer. Yeah.
Yep.
I never understood why he wasn't a higher level contributor. It seemed like every time given a chance, he did, but yeah, he is. He's has all the opportunity he wants on that Brooklyn team to do, and he's playing super well. Kind of, he reminds me of Lonzo in the sense that, like, I hope he gets moved to a team that he has enough opportunity on to help them win, because I really enjoy seeing him play.
Third Laker tenure coming up.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I'd love that.
Me too.
I think that's everything we want to talk about, Tim. Anything else you wanted to mention before we get out of here?
No, man, I think this is awesome. So we got a big game against the Pelicans tomorrow.
Yeah.
I think we have stuff going up this whole week. We have Charlie Walter hanging out with us on Thursday to preview the Warriors game before the Warriors game on Friday. So lots of fun stuff this week at the BSS show.
Yeah, for sure. And that's I was going to mention that as well. Like, we're looking to start bringing in some guests, some people who cover other teams, other big Cavs fans, all that kind of stuff. We're going to do some of that here on the NBA Weekly Show. Some of it we're going to make into a separate episode, like Tim's saying, kind of a preview for the Warriors game. So we're looking to give you as much content or more than you want, but we're be doing it here. We're going to starting next week. We'll put some stuff out on the socials, ask you all like what you want to hear about, whether it's Cavs related, NBA related, and we'll try and cover it all. But with that, for Tim Daniel, I am Kevin Lynch. Thanks for hanging out, and go Cavs.
Go Cavs.